There's something sitting heavy in this energy right now. Something that not everyone will want to admit, but I think those of you who are meant to be here today, you're already feeling it. There's this quiet ache underneath everything. Like you've been carrying something for a long time, and recently you realized the weight of it wasn't even yours to carry. Or maybe it was. Maybe that's what's making this so complicated. Because this isn't a clean story. This isn't a situation where someone was simply the villain and you were simply the victim. The energy coming in is much more layered than that. Much more human than that. And I think part of you already knows that. Part of you has been sitting with this knowing for a while now, turning it over in your mind, trying to make sense of something that doesn't quite fit into any neat category. So let's go into this together. Slowly. Because this reading deserves that kind of care. What I'm sensing right away is the story of someone who came to you at a low point in their life. And I don't mean that casually, I mean they were genuinely struggling. There was something broken in them. Something unresolved. A wound that was older than your connection with them, something that existed long before you ever entered the picture. And somehow, in the way that life arranges these things, you became the person who made them feel safe. That's not a small thing. That's actually enormous. Because if you think about what it means to make someone feel safe, genuinely safe, not just comfortable, that requires a level of presence, of emotional availability, of warmth that not everyone offers. And you offered it. Maybe instinctively. Maybe because that's simply who you are. Does this feel familiar? Like you didn't even make a conscious decision to become someone's sanctuary, it just happened. They gravitated toward you. They opened up to you in ways they maybe hadn't opened up to anyone else. And there's something beautiful in that, even now. Even with everything that's come after. But here's what the energy is starting to show me, and I want to sit with this for a moment. Because this is the part that might sting a little. They were using your light to see their own reflection more clearly. And at first, that felt like intimacy. It felt like connection. When someone looks at you with that kind of intensity, that kind of focus, it can feel like love. It can feel like being truly seen. But there's a difference between someone seeing you and someone using the mirror you hold up for them to finally start to see themselves. I'm not saying they were malicious. I don't feel malice in this energy at all, and I want to be clear about that. What I feel is someone who was genuinely lost. Genuinely hurting. And genuinely unequipped to love you the way you deserve to be loved at a time when they were so focused on their own survival. On their own becoming. There's something repeating in this energy, and I keep hearing something like, they didn't know how to give what they were still trying to find. That keeps coming through. This person was in the process of rebuilding something internal, and you, whether you knew it or not, became part of that construction project. Now here's where things get complicated. Because on some level, there was real connection here. I need to acknowledge that, because I think some of you might be tempted to rewrite the whole story as meaningless, to say it was never real, that none of it counted. And I don't think that's true. The love you felt was real. The moments were real. The energy between you had something genuine in it. But there's this card here that keeps pulling my attention, and it's showing me a figure who is standing at a kind of emotional crossroads, exhausted, having given so much of themselves, looking back at everything they poured out and slowly starting to realize that the return was never quite equal. Not because they were foolish. Not because they were naive. But because they were open. Open-hearted people always run this risk, and it is both their greatest gift and their deepest wound. You gave a lot in this connection. I feel that. Not just in terms of time or physical presence, but emotionally. Energetically. There were probably conversations that went on for hours. Moments where you held space for this person's darkness, their fears, their past, and you did it willingly. Maybe even joyfully, at the time. Because when we love someone, witnessing their healing feels meaningful. It feels like purpose. But somewhere along the way, and I want you to think about when this might have been for you, somewhere along the way, you started to feel like you were the only one doing the witnessing. Like the relationship had settled into a particular shape, and in that shape, you were always the one giving and they were always the one receiving. And maybe you tried to change that dynamic. Maybe you tried to express a need, to ask for something in return. And maybe, this is interesting, maybe when you did, something shifted. Something in their energy changed in a way that made you feel guilty for even having needs in the first place. Have you noticed that? That particular pattern, where trying to advocate for yourself somehow made you feel like the problem. That's not a small thing to sit with. The energy shifts here, and what I'm seeing now feels like the aftermath. Like the period that comes after something has ended, or started to unravel, or changed in a way that can't quite be undone. And what strikes me is where each person is standing in this aftermath. You, and I say this gently, because I know this isn't easy to hear, you are in a process of reckoning. Not a collapse, not a breakdown, but a genuine spiritual reckoning. A moment where you are being asked to look very honestly at what this connection asked of you. What it cost you. And what it revealed about patterns that may have been present in your life long before this specific person arrived. Because here's the thing. And I feel this strongly in the cards. This person came to you to heal. And you allowed it. And some part of you, maybe a part you haven't fully examined yet, needed to be needed in that way. Needed to be the safe harbor, the healer, the one who understood. Does that land for anyone? That quiet ache to be irreplaceable to someone? I'm not saying that to make you feel bad. I'm saying it because that is the invitation hidden inside this painful experience. The universe doesn't send us difficult relationships purely as punishment. It sends them as mirrors. And this person, despite everything, or maybe because of everything, has reflected back something about your own patterns of love that is now asking to be looked at, understood, and gently released. Now I want to talk about where they are. Because the title of this reading says something important. Your person admits they used you to heal. But now they're the one bleeding. And I feel this. I feel this in the energy so clearly. There's something almost poetic and heartbreaking about it at the same time. This person, who came to you fragmented, who received your light, your warmth, your patience, your healing, has healed. Or at least, they've healed enough to stand on their own now. Enough to see themselves more clearly. Enough to have rebuilt some inner foundation. And in that clarity, they can see what they did. What they took. What was given freely, yes, but perhaps taken a little too freely. There's guilt here. Real guilt. Not performed, not surface level, I'm talking about the kind of guilt that wakes someone up at 3 in the morning. The kind that comes when you've grown just enough to look back at a previous version of yourself and feel genuine shame at how you operated. How you moved through a relationship that deserved better. How you absorbed someone's love like sunlight while not fully turning toward them in return. The wound they're bleeding from right now? It's the wound of self-knowledge. It's the particular pain of understanding that you hurt someone you cared about, not through cruelty, but through unconsciousness. Through need. Through survival mode dressed up as love. And that is, in its own way, a profound kind of suffering. I'm not asking you to feel sorry for them. I want to be clear about that. Your pain is real and it deserves its own space. But I am offering this perspective because I think understanding what they're experiencing might help some of you release the version of the story where you were simply discarded. Where you meant nothing. Because that doesn't feel true to me. What I feel is someone who is now grappling with the full weight of what you meant to them, and that weight is landing now because they have the emotional capacity to carry it that they didn't have before. It's bittersweet. I know. To matter most to someone in the moment, they finally have the strength to stand without you. There's something else here, sitting quietly underneath everything else, and I want to name it because I think it's important. There's a pattern of idealization followed by deflation in this connection. At the beginning, there was an almost overwhelming sense of being placed on a pedestal, of feeling like the most important, most understood, most loved version of yourself. And then gradually, as this person healed, as they became more whole, that intensity shifted. The need reduced. And with the reduction of their need came a reduction, perhaps, of their focus on you. Their appreciation. Their presence. And that shift, that particular kind of emotional withdrawal, has a way of making someone feel not just unloved, but somehow less than they were. Like the person they were at the beginning of the relationship, that version of themselves that felt so special, so seen, where did that person go? Why did the seeing stop? I keep getting this image of someone standing in a room where all the lights have been slowly dimmed, one by one, and trying to remember what the room looked like when it was fully lit. And that ache, that specific ache of remembering brightness, that's something I feel several of you are carrying right now. But here's what I want to say about that. The light that made that room beautiful? It was yours. You brought it. You generated it. It was never dependent on their gaze to exist, it only felt that way because their attention amplified it back to you. And one of the deepest lessons available in this experience is the reclaiming of that light as fundamentally, irreducibly your own. The energy is showing me something about your future now, and I want to share it carefully because I think it matters. There is a version of you on the other side of this that is quieter in the most powerful way. Not quieter because you've shut down, not quieter because you've closed off, but quieter because you've finally stopped waiting for someone to confirm what you're worth. There's a stillness in that version of you that comes from having walked through this fire and discovered, not through being told, not through someone loving you correctly, but through your own hard-won experience, that you are not dependent on being chosen to be valuable. And I feel like that version of you is closer than it might seem right now. Especially for those of you who have been in the heaviest part of the grief. The heaviest part. I feel like something is beginning to lighten. Not because the situation has resolved, it may not resolve in any traditional sense, but because you are beginning to resolve. Beginning to consolidate something within yourself that this experience cracked open. That cracking open? As terrible as it felt? It was necessary. Because what was cracked open wasn't your heart in the sense of destruction. What was cracked open was a particular belief, maybe an old one, maybe one you inherited long before this person ever appeared in your life, a belief that your love, your care, your healing presence was something you had to offer in order to deserve being loved in return. That you had to be useful. Had to be the safe place. Had to sustain others in order to earn your place in their world. That belief is old. And it is not yours to keep carrying. For those of you in this collective who are wondering whether this person will come back, I feel the question. I feel several of you holding that hope or that dread or that complicated mixture of both. And what I'm sensing is that there is movement in their energy. Something is turning in them. Whether that manifests as direct communication or simply as an internal reckoning that you may never witness directly, something is moving. But here's what keeps coming through, and I think this is actually the most important message in this entire reading. Whether they return or not cannot be the question you're centering right now. Because the work that is available to you, the growth, the reclamation, the healing, all of it is happening in you, regardless of what they choose. And if they do come back, if there is some reconnection in the future, some conversation, some acknowledgement, you will need to be different than you were before. Not harder. Not colder. But rooted in a way you perhaps weren't before. Clear about what you need. Clear about what you will no longer quietly absorb. Because if the dynamic doesn't change, the story doesn't change. And I feel like several of you already know that. Already feel that truth in your bones. The energy is very clear on this. The version of this connection that existed before is not something to return to. If there is a future here, and I'm not saying there is or isn't, I'm only saying if, it would have to be built on entirely different ground. New ground. Ground that was cleared by exactly this kind of pain. I want to take a moment here, because the energy feels like it needs a breath. This has been a lot. And if you've been listening to this alone, if you've been nodding along or feeling that particular bittersweet sting of recognition, I want you to know that what you're carrying is real. What you went through was real. And the confusion you feel when you try to figure out whether to grieve it or be grateful for it or be angry about it or simply let it go, all of that confusion is valid. You don't have to land on one feeling. You're allowed to love someone who hurt you. You're allowed to wish them healing while also acknowledging that they caused you harm. You're allowed to be grateful for what the relationship taught you while being completely honest about what it cost. These things aren't contradictions. They are the full, complicated texture of what it means to have loved deeply. I keep hearing something come through, and I want to share it now. It feels like something being said very gently, almost whispered. You were never too much. You were simply in the presence of someone who was not yet enough. That's not a condemnation of them. It's simply a truth about timing. About readiness. About where each person was on their own path. As this reading begins to close, I want to leave you with something that the energy keeps circling back to. There is a quality in you, a particular quality, that this experience has not diminished, even though it may have shaken you. And that quality is your capacity to love. Genuinely, deeply, presentfully love. That capacity is not a flaw. It is not the thing that made you vulnerable. It is the thing that makes you remarkable. And the fact that it was not fully met in this connection does not mean it won't be. It does not mean you are destined to keep pouring into empty vessels. What it means is that you are being asked, right now, to turn some of that love inward. To become a little bit of what you were to them, a safe harbor, but for yourself. To hold your own wounds with the same tenderness you extended to theirs. To sit with your own fear, your own grief, your own rebuilding with the same patience you offered so freely. The energy around you right now is one of transition. Of standing at the edge of something new even if you can't see clearly what that something is yet. Trust the transition. Trust the not knowing. Because what is dissolving needed to dissolve, and what is coming is being built on much truer ground. You are not broken by this. You are being refined by it. There's a difference, even when it doesn't feel like one. Go gently with yourself today. And know that whatever you are moving through right now, you are not moving through it alone.